You are listening to the Breaktime Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Jennifer Reif, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. I finally made a breakthrough in my GenAI application with Quarkus and Langchain4j after having some dependency issues last week. So I now have a working app. I'll give some more details there. Then I'll add some insight into the book I'm co-writing and hopefully answer some burning questions you might have on that, as well as mention a few places I'll be appearing in the first few months of 2026. Then I read a blog post on the Neo4j developer blog about a new data type for vectors. Without further ado, let's dig into the details. To start us off on a high note, I now have a working Quarkus Langchain4j application. I had to do a few different things. I spent quite a bit of the first part of this week debugging and still hashing out issues to see if I could get it going. But I initially started by upgrading my Spring app, making sure everything was good there, and then ran into a couple of little bugs there and fixed those and thought, oh, I wonder if that might be the same problem in the Langchain4j and Quarkus application. So I switched over there, did the same thing, some updates, some upgrades to different things, debugged a little bit further, and finally had a breakthrough. There were a couple of things going on here. The first is that the latest Quarkus version of 3.30 did better about pulling in some of the later dependencies. So it was pulling in the correct Langchain4j core and community versions at that point. That helped quite a bit and relieved some of that dependency conflicts I was seeing. Then I also upgraded the MCP Cipher server on Neo4j's end. They had a new version out, so I upgraded that. That ended up breaking my UVX installation and some of the caching that was going on there, which may have initially caused some problems, but also was preventing some other problems. So I had to sit down and debug some of that as well. That kicked off some more dependency mismatches. I had to add an additional argument in the MCP configuration for pulling a specific version of fast MCP, which is a dependency inside the MCP server in Neo4j's. So I had to update that as well, add an argument into the MCP config. So that's there in the repository. You can see that. But I also had to add some wrapper methods inside the RAG tools class that sets up all of the tool definitions. Because while I could see the MCP tools and I could call each one of them individually, it didn't seem to retrieve those as one in a set of multiple tools. I had a few custom tools that I defined for vector search, for graph traversal, graph rag, and then for a couple other things as well. And it didn't seem like the MCP tools were being added to that full list. It would either see one or the other. So what I ended up doing is just adding wrapper methods inside the rag tools class in order to specifically call and add those MCP tools to the list in the RAG tools. And then all of a sudden, everything was working fine. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't add them automatically. That would be nice to add in Langchain4j. It should automatically pick those MCP tools up and add them to the full list of tools that are available within the application. But for some reason, it wasn't either prioritizing them correctly or just adding them to the list correctly. So even though I could call the MCP client directly and list the tools, for some reason, it just didn't pick those up unless I specified and wrapped those tools in the full list of customized tools I already had. You can check that out. You can look at the differences there. Again, hopefully something that maybe will be tweaked and adjusted as time goes on, but that was what I had to do. But now I do have vector rag working, I have graph rag working, and I have MCP integration working with text to cipher tools available, which is amazing. The next thing on my list is I want to talk a little bit about the Java book that I'm working on. I am co-writing this book. It's called AI First Java, and it talks about how to learn Java in an AI first approach. So this really looks at how students and newcomers to the Java language will likely learn Java now and into the future because we have so many AI tools. We have things like AI chat tools and lots of good coding tools. How are we going to continue to learn programming, or how are newcomers going to learn programming from the outset with all these tools at our fingertips? It starts with an intro to programming and some Java concepts, but talking from an AI first perspective. So it's a little bit different from the way we've approached programming before. And it starts with those concepts, and the book will continue into full application development. It's a little bit interesting because I feel like that a lot of the coding tools are really helpful for diving into deeper topics and jump starting. But on the other hand, you still have to back up and teach those introductory concepts. So integrating the two things that are relatively intermediate and advanced with AI, and then stepping back and explaining the things that it generates or it builds for you is a little bit of a different approach than what I'm used to. I'm super excited to put this together. I always have felt that I learn the basics better when I have to teach it from scratch. This is something that I learned with music for teaching music lessons for years. It's always interesting. Once you pass that beginner stage, it's easy to get in your own bubble with the blinders on and not realize how to address or explain those first initial concepts to someone who has no idea what those mean or how those work. And I've always felt that I learn way better when I can explain those introductory concepts, go back to the beginning and remember what it was like, and find new and inventive ways to help other people understand those things, hopefully better than I did when I learned them. I'm really enjoying this process and the writing so far of putting this book together, and I'm looking forward to keeping you posted on the progress through probably middle of 2026. I'm also gearing up for some events in 2026 already. Yes, I know we haven't even closed out 2025, but I have a Glasgow meetup in January, middle of January or so. So I'll be in Europe for that, the UK. And then I have JFocus in February. I'll be speaking, presenting there at that conference. I haven't been in a few years, and I'm really excited to go back. Then I'll be at DevNexus in March. This is one of my favorite events every year, along with JFocus and many others. I'm excited to be back for that conference in Atlanta in the US in March. And then I'm also looking at new topics, new learning, new exploration as I'm gearing up for 2026. I'm building lots of new things, thinking about new concepts, how to integrate new tools and different things that people might want to be interested to know. I also want to recap the thoughts on having a guest here on this podcast. I'm thinking about a guest every month. I already am lining up January's guest, which I'm really looking forward to. But if you want to leave feedback or suggestions, don't forget that I do have a podcast feedback form. I will link that in the show notes, but you're more than welcome to reach out to me on socials or however you want to connect with me and provide your thoughts on either guests or suggestions of feedback that you have on just this whole idea of adding a guest to Breaktime Tech Talks. The blog post I was able to get through this week was introducing Neo4j's native vector data type. Neo4j recently added a entirely new data type to the database to support vectors and vector indexing and vector search. It looks pretty seamless to migrate this, and it also looks like it's a nice transition if you're using the old list format of vectors. So previously, you would store a vector value inside Neo4j as a property, and this was just being stored as a list of floats in this case. But the new vector data type transitions away from that. It's a totally separate data type. So converting between the two, it looks pretty seamless to me, which is really nice. There's nothing that's going to break right out of the gate for you, at least hopefully not on the database side at least. Then this new data type is optimized for constraints, semantic searches, and good data integrity. So this is really interesting and really helpful as we move into this next phase of generative AI integration with all different types of tools, right? As we start building more sophisticated applications and things with these tools, we really want to make sure that the vector searches that we're doing, the semantic searches, anything we might be doing with those vectors, we want to ensure we have good data there and good representation of that data. And that means in vector format as well. Having a totally separate vector data type means that you can optimize that type for creating constraints and having good high data integrity so that numbers don't get skewed or manipulated or just not stored properly. And then also increasing the quality of your semantic searches, especially over time. The driver support is also there, so you can retrieve vectors from the database and you can save vectors to the database all through all the different types of language drivers that we offer. So that's really nice for working within your applications. There are some programmatic examples plus a Cypher example as well in the blog post, so you can see what that looks like. And I will need to go back and update several of my dataset imports now to take advantage of this. Instead of saving the embedding as just a regular property series of lists, now I can go in and save it as a vector type, and the blog post shows you how to do that, which is super nice. I am so thrilled that the Quarkus and Langchain4j app is now working just in time for the workshop training I gave this week. As we wrap 2025 and head into 2026, I'm really excited to see where the adventures take me. This podcast will probably get a break during the holidays. I hope everyone can enjoy some time to breathe and prepare for a fantastic 2026. As always, thanks for listening and happy coding.